antibiotics and hormones, and those hormones go directly into our food and we consume it. They are responsible for also lots of manure and water pollution, which is a lot of concentrated waste in one area. And just overall, factory farms are breeding grounds for pandemics because the workers are so bad, because the conditions are so bad for the workers. And a not so fun fact is that waste from the smaller CAFOs is equivalent to human waste from 16,000 people. And CAFOs also have a severe impact on the surrounding communities. A couple years ago, I watched a documentary called What the Health, just talking about the benefits of a plant-based diet, and also the meat industry as a whole. It's on Netflix. I would really, really recommend it. And so there's a scene that takes place in a small town in North Carolina. And North Carolina is known as the hog capital of the world, where confined pigs outnumber people 40-1. They interview people from a neighborhood that live in the area surrounding a pig CAFO. And right in the middle of the neighborhood, pig waste is sprayed weekly into the air. And people from the community have asked the CAFO operators that they would not spray on certain days if they know they'll have outdoor events. But the pig CAFO just does not listen and kind of sprays at will. So yeah, and in North Carolina, pig CAFOs disproportionately affect low-income communities of color, and that's just a typical pattern in terms of when you look at who is really impacted by CAFOs. Next slide, please. So on the same thread of social impact, it's really important to look at the social impacts of climate change because they're just as important as the environmental ones. So the first point that we're going to talk about is displacement projections. So the Groundwell report concluded that by 2050, 143 people will be displaced due to climate change activity, and this will cause them to lose deep cultural and historical ties to their land and food pathways. This is primarily taking place in the global south, so that's Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, Latin America. And so the next point we're going to talk about is food security. There are currently 820 million food insecure individuals around the globe. As climate and weather patterns continue to shift and disrupt food systems, unfortunately, these numbers will increase. Food insecurity is also a major problem in St. Louis. The Missouri Coalition for the Environment actually researched this a couple years ago, and they have a really, really interesting and interactive map online that I would very much suggest looking into. And lastly, just a point on food policy. Food and agriculture policies are being developed to both mitigate the harm caused by greenhouse gas emissions and also account for farm labor rights and land stewardship. And just to quickly go over that last point, mental health is very much connected to climate change in terms of just general climate anxiety and worry about what is to come. And this, what you see on the slide, is not a comprehensive list of every single social impact of climate change, but we hope that we've given you a broader understanding of what climate change really means. All this information can seem daunting, but we can overcome climate change by banding together and really working hard to look at our individual choices as well as researching what is going on at the policy level. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Brianna. So now that we talked about how broken our food system is, we're going to look at what we can do about it. As consumers, we really have a big power to change the status quo by investing our dollars. Can you hear me?
You went out for a second.
Yeah, I don't know why my computer is just changing my mic randomly. Am I back?
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I was saying that basically by putting our dollars in a food product, we really support the industry that's behind it. And that's the case for everyone, whether we are individuals or an institution like WashU. So let's look at what WashU is doing. WashU represents a big food system There are over 20,000 food transactions taking place on campus every day, over 30 venues across campuses. And WashU actually contracts with 4 different dining providers who operate the different venues on campus. The main one is Bon Appetit, both on the Danforth campus and the School of Medicine. And actually, WashU as a whole represents about $10 million every year spent on food. So it's really massive if you think about it. And with these dollars, there is really an opportunity there to leverage these dollars and influence the food system. So in 2015, WashU adopted this strategic plan for sustainable operations and set a number of goals across different category areas, including food. And for food, the goal was to support a food system that advances environmental and public health while supporting a strong local economy. And that lofty goal was declined into more concrete objectives around sustainable and local sourcing. So how are we doing on these goals? It's really exciting, and you guys are the first one to see these graphs because we got the data pretty recently. In 2019, 22% of our dollars spent on food were spent on local food. And the way we define local food is food that is grown, prepared, or processed within 200 miles of campus. And that is exactly the goal we had set in 2015. We are meeting it and really excited about it. Now it's time to set another goal for the next 5-10 years that is more ambitious. The middle graph is showing food that is sourced in a way that is sustainable, humane, or fair. So we are looking at a number of third-party certifications here. And in 2019, 18% of our food spent met that criteria. It doesn't mean that everything else is unethical. It means that we don't really know for the rest of it. For this 18%, we have third-party certifications that show that they are ethical, fair, or humane practices. It's good, but it's not the goal we had set. We need to do better on this one. And the very last one, or the one on the right, is basically the intersection of the two. So we do want to support local farmer and the local economy, but especially local farmers that have good environmental and ethical practices. And right now, 9% of this food spend and local. Can you hear me?
You cut out for a second, and now your video's off.
Okay. We are in bad luck. Cassie was also cutting last week. I'm so sorry about that. But Brianna, you're taking over anyway.
Yes, so the Green Monday campaign is the campaign to try to get people to pledge to eat vegetarian on Mondays. And a central question in this campaign is, how can we reduce our food print? So as I said, it's a global movement to urge consumers to consider how their food choices affect public health and the environment. And if you would like to see what WashU offers during the non-COVID area, you can check out our Instagram and go to our Green Monday highlight to see all the delicious plant-based meals that WashU has offered over the past year on Mondays. And you can also go to our website to take the Green Monday pledge if you would like. And just a tip for students who are on campus, all stations should have a vegetarian option. If you are a student currently on campus, let us know in the chat what your favorite vegetarian option is that you've gotten from the dining hall this year. And so if everyone in the WashU community eats vegetarian 1 additional day per week, WashU overall will collectively reduce carbon emissions by as much as 5,000 metric tons annually, equivalent to taking 1,053 cars off the road. So, you know, our people power is very large if we all band together. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of myths around meatless dining and just vegetarian plant-based diets. So we're going to bust some of those myths for you all today. So the recommended dietary amounts of protein for men older than 19 is 56 grams per day. For women, it's 46 grams per day. However, this very much varies by person. Vegetables, grains, beans, fruits, nuts, and seeds all have protein. It's much easier to reach your recommended protein value than people think. One serving of chicken or steak will almost completely fill your quota for the day. And that's only if you ate that one piece of meat and nothing else, which is very, very unlikely. So definitely try to supplement those vegetables and for meat when you can. So the food pyramid says that you need meat, is what people think. However, that's untrue. You need protein, not meat. People are definitely discovering that there's such a thing as too much meat. Chemicals and antibiotics in the factory farms are marketed to us in excess, subsidized and controlled by corporations to unrealistically low prices at fast food chains. The chances of developing heart disease also increase with meat intake. So there are a lot of studies about how a high meat intake is linked to bad health. And then there is this myth that tofu is bad for you. So tofu is a plant made from soy, and it's healthiest in its form that's closest to its natural state. So chicken nugget shaped tofu is going to have more preservatives and sodium. Generally, studies say that eating less meat and more plant products will reduce the risk of cancer, not the other way around. And there are tons of other myths that are being perpetrated about plant-based diets. And meat corporations help perpetuate these myths so that we don't know the truth. So it's really important to be a conscious consumer when you're learning or thinking about what you're going to put in your grocery cart. So next, we're going to talk about the Sustainable Food Guide. So this is a resource that you can always refer back to. It's on the OOS website that's listed on the screen. So we give a little bit about preparation and consumption, such as cooking tips, plant-based diet tips, campus food sourcing, and how to eat on the go. We give some tips on waste that are really helpful. And we also let you know how you can get involved. So student groups and community organizations, and even some WashU classes you can take about sustainability. We also talk a little bit about shopping, such as good grocery stores that have a lot of local sourcing, farmers markets, community sourced agriculture, and food labels.
Great. Thanks, Brianna. So now we're going to take a step back and look at the St. Louis food system in general. Again, we know many of us are not going to be on campus, but there are still many resources in the region. So the Midwest is very focused on the agriculture, and St. Louis itself is actually the home of many agri-businesses. However, on all the land that is used for agriculture, less than 0.01% of that cropland is used to grow food for people. The rest of it is used for growing either food for animals or crops to create materials or biofuel like ethanol. This is pretty sad, but I want to also say that there is also a very active food and farm scene in St. Louis. The St. Louis Food Policy Coalition gathers.
You froze for a moment.
Oh my gosh. Am I back?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, good. What was I saying? Totally lost the Food Policy Coalition. Yes. So many local groups that are working together to make the local food system better, more equitable, more sustainable through different policy actions. Yes, there is still a lot going on, but in terms of land occupation, we realize that because our food system is relies so much on industrial production, we end up not having a lot of local land that is used to grow food for people. Another thing that I thought I'd mention is that during the pandemic, we realized how local food systems were so much more resilient than global local food system that experience more shortage. And as Brianna mentioned, were kind of considered breeding grounds for pandemic. And actually the local farmers market or CSA, community supported agriculture, really experienced a surge in interest and demand in the past few months, which is really exciting. Known and Grown STL is a new-ish program about a year old that is out of the St. Louis Food Policy Coalition and is designed to support and promote farmers within 150 miles of St. Louis that use humane chemical-free practices. So here, again, is kind of the intersection of local and sustainable farmers. They have about 50 growers that are certified already, which is super exciting. And these farmers that are certified benefit from marketing, more visibility, etc. from that new brand. So look for that label. You likely won't find it in big supermarkets, but more local, small scale markets like City Greens or Local Harvest, south of Tower Grove Park. On the Known and Grown website, there are a few resources. First, the local food locator. It's an interactive resource where you can basically select different types of food, put your zip code, and it's an interactive map that shows you what are the closest local growers that are Known and Grown certified that you can buy from. And they also have a farmers market and a local food guide that are more static resources, but also highlight this food outlet where you can find food that is both local and sustainable.
Yes, so the Green Dining Alliance. So there are 100 plus restaurants in St. Louis that are certified members of GDA. 15 of these are located in the Loop or within walking distance of campus. And there are actually 2 GDA restaurants on campus, the Whitmore House and Ibby's. And the Whitmore House is something that you have to pay to opt into. It's not just like a restaurant that students can walk into, just for everyone's information. But the Green Dining Alliance is a restaurant sustainability certification program of the St. Louis Earth Day organization, which is a nonprofit. So the GDA works with restaurants to reduce their environmental impact by completing an annual on-site audit that evaluates all areas of operations, including sustainable food and waste reduction. There are restaurants located all around St. Louis, and they actually have an interactive website map on their website. So would recommend checking that out. Personally, my favorite GDA restaurants are Clementine's and Blueberry Hill. So about grocery shopping, it's really important to understand food labels because of something called greenwashing. That's where corporations will use unaccredited labels in order to appear eco-friendly. Just because a product has a green label doesn't make it sustainable or ethically produced. So the labels that you see on the screen, those are accredited labels. That means they have third-party audit and inspection. So these are definitely things to look out for. So USDA Organic, that certifies that there were no spray chemicals used. The Rainforest Alliance logo shows that farms aim to conserve biodiversity and support the communities the food comes from. Certified Humane, that really focuses on making sure that the animals are being treated well. The non-GMO project just focuses on making sure that the food has not been genetically modified. And the Fair Trade Certified just also makes sure that the workers are treated fairly. So some notes about grocery stores near campus. United Provisions is right in the Loop. The Trader Joe's is not necessarily close to campus, but it is really close to the Brentwood Metro stop. And the Metro is super great for alternative transportation if you're on campus. And just like when you're shopping in grocery stores, it's best practice to bring your own bags. With the pandemic, sometimes stores won't let you use them in the store, but you can just put your groceries in the cart and then bag them yourself outside. It's also good to note that Schnucks, Deerbergs, and Trader Joe's usually have soft plastic recycling. Trader Joe's I'm unsure about because I haven't been since the pandemic started, but I'm much more certain about Schnucks and Deerbergs still having that soft plastic recycling. So if you do go to the grocery store and you do end up using the plastic bags, that's where you can take them and just leave them. They'll have a container. And so community supported agriculture. So WashU has a partnership with local farmer community supported agriculture. So what you get is a crop box filled with local produce, eggs, and more. There's a pickup on Wednesdays for WashU employees at the Wydown Middle School. It's very close for campus. And if you go on their website, you'll see where you can order the student box. And they have a variety of pickup times and locations for WashU students, and you can choose from those. People can sign up for bi-weekly or weekly pickups. You can sign up for weekly or bi-weekly pickups, and it's important to note that only the student box is $20. So yeah, we put together some information about local farmers markets, and we just wanted to let you all know that WashU does have a farmers market at the med school, but it's on hold due to COVID. It's usually weekly and year-round. However, there are some vendors that are taking orders online. But yeah, here you'll see information about when the various farmers markets are open and how you can get there. And I just would like to know that I've been to some of these, and a lot of them don't only have food, they also have products from lots of other interesting local vendors. Next slide, please. And so we're going to talk a little bit about food sustainability at home. And so just start off with, some quick cooking tips. So defrost frozen food in the fridge overnight. Defrosting food in advance typically halves the cooking time. Cut your food into smaller pieces so it cooks more quickly. Cook in batches to make the most out of the energy it takes to heat an oven. Turn down the ring or burner once the cooking temperature or state has reached a simmer rather than a boil. Keep the rings clean on the oven as burnt food absorbs heat and makes an electric ring less efficient. Always put lids on pans to keep the heat in, and use glass baking dishes in the oven when it's possible. Glass retains heat better than other materials and accelerates cooking. So when cooking with an oven, stagger pans and dishes and avoid laying aluminum foil on that racks to promote airflow. Try rice cookers, slow cookers, and kettles instead of the oven or stovetop. They're more energy efficient and take less effort from you. Steam vegetables instead of boiling them to save energy and water. And honestly, with a lot of these tips, they're not only good for the environment, but they simply make the process go a little quicker in terms of cooking. So definitely some helpful things there. And just a side note, roasted veggies are a great plant-based addition to any meal. So Imperfect Foods is a website that I'll tell you about in a second. So we overall have a very wasteful food system. Sometimes grocery stores won't purchase food from farmers and other producers if it doesn't meet cosmetic standards. Other times, food producers will have a bountiful harvest or a surplus of product. If no one buys this food or they don't donate it, it just goes to waste. So Imperfect Foods buy some of the products that grocery stores won't take. This is something new, and we have heard of some people using it, but the Office of Sustainability or myself, I've never really tried the process. But the boxes are customizable. You can choose between organic or conventional produce, and you can choose everything that goes in your box. And so some more tips on preventing food waste. So just a quick note that composting is kind of a second to last resort, the last resort, of course, being the landfill. And it's really important to prevent overall food waste through food preservation. So some tips for that: keep bananas, apples, citrus, and tomatoes separate because they emit gases as they ripen, they can cause other fruits and vegetables around them to ripen and spoil prematurely. Ensure that your fridge is chilled at a temperature between 37 degrees and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and your freezer is at 0 degrees and 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Untie bunches of herbs and greens to allow air circulation. If they can't breathe, they'll rot more quickly. Don't wash your fruits and vegetables until you're ready to eat them because exposure to water encourages spoilage. Consider canning, freezing, or preserving extra fruits and vegetables. Breads and other goods can also be frozen and defrosted. Wait for your food to cool down before refrigerating or freezing it to avoid overconsumption of energy. And ensure that leftovers are stored in airtight containers, especially before being frozen. Air in the container can cause freezer burn. Lastly, label all your leftovers with a date so you know which ones should be eaten earliest. If there's anyone who attended last week's session here, feel free to talk about in the chat something that you learned, or if you have another tip for reducing food waste, or just a favorite leftover recipe to share.
I
All
think
right,
that,
so
sorry, go ahead, Brianna.
I was just going to say thank you all for coming, and back to Claire.
Yeah, I think that closes our prepared part of the presentation. So here are just a few ways to connect. I'm sure many of you, though, are already connected to us in a way or another. A lot of familiar faces on this call. But yeah, follow us on social media, subscribe to our monthly newsletter. We'll be following up with a recording as well as a recording of the last week's waste session. And here are our email address if you want to connect. I'm going to stop sharing. And here we are in a gallery view, at least on my screen, and I can see many of your faces, which is exciting. But we have a few more minutes for questions if you have any. There's one that I caught in the chat, was about the documentary that you mentioned, Brianna. Just what was the title again?
Yes, it was What the Health.
Anyone else has seen it?
Would definitely recommend. It made me go vegan for 2 years after watching it. Currently not vegan anymore, but still very much plant-based. So would recommend watching it.
And I feel like this is one of many documentaries that are showing the behind the scenes of the food production. And I feel like the more you know, the more conscious your choice becomes. So again, what we are recommending here is, inform yourself, learn how your food is made and where it's coming from, rather than preaching for a specific diet.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat. If food production becomes sustainable, does that mean giving up non-local foods? Are there any completely sustainable ways to ship food? I think that's a very good question. I think that you never have to completely give up something. I think that's something that we talk about a lot, just in the overall scheme of things. It's really up to you and your personal choices. I'm not sure if there are any completely sustainable ways to ship food, but I do know that some companies do carbon offsetting to kind of Claire, maybe you could talk more about that. But you know that some companies who ship things do carbon offsetting to kind of offset the emissions that they produce.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. So a big question is, can our local food system support all our needs? And I don't know if there is one answer to that, but the question is definitely out there. Even among the sustainability community and the pro-local food community, we also know that it takes a lot to feed cities, and the local food system around cities may not be robust enough. So that's why we also need a more sustainable, industrialized food system to complement that. And in terms of the shipping and transportation, I think it's good to think about it in the way that what food can be transported via train, for instance, or on land. We know flying is the most unsustainable way to ship things, and usually it's done for things that are more perishable, so fish or seafood, or even like strawberries and things that will just get bad more quickly or need to be refrigerated, are less okay, I feel like, to buy from far away, because they're likely being flew in, as opposed to dried grains or things like that have a longer shelf life, and therefore are usually transported by train or cargo ships, things like that. That's a really good question, though. If you have no question, also feel free to share your own experience as a eater, like places you like to eat or favorite recipes or things like that.
Definitely. There was another question in the chat. Could you speak a little more on what considerations are involved by the third-party certifications WashU uses to certify food sources as being ethically sourced?
Yes. So basically, we have a list of, I want to say, 10 to 15 different third-party certifications that we consider. And that includes things that certify that the food is sustainable, humane, and fair. So as Brianna mentioned earlier, for example, fair trade or certified humanely raised are some of these criteria we look at. But we also have another category. I'm going to keep talking. Can you?
Oh, we last heard you. There's also another category.
Okay, that says that basically non-certified organic practices, because getting a third-party certification for small-scale producers and farmers can be really hard. It's usually expensive, it takes a lot of paperwork that these farmers may not have. And that's why we also wanted to be able to include these local farmers, small-scale farmers.
We last heard small scale farmers.
Jeez. That may have good practices, but just not a certification. Does that respond to the question?
I think it's a pretty complete, yeah, he's nodding.
Cool. I also want to add, because so many of you didn't participate in last week's session, last week we talked about waste and some programs for zero waste dining on campus. Right now we have a giveaway for students for, a giveaway of bamboo utensil sets, which include a fork, a knife, a spoon, a straw and a straw cleaner, all of that in a nice pouch. And so all WashU students, grad and undergrad, are eligible to receive one for free. It's on our website. You can just fill out the form, and it's also available for sale for $8 a piece. And the other really important program is Eco2Go, which is making a big comeback this year, and basically allows you to choose a reusable box on campus when you order from Parkside, the Dogs, the Village, or PD. Make sure you empty it and you return it within 24 hours. But yeah, these programs are really exciting, especially in the time of the pandemic where to-go eating is kind of becoming the norm.
Yeah, and so we have another question in the chat. How have WashU's efforts to decrease waste been hurt or altered by the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's kind of what I was talking about. So since the beginning, everyone kind of saw it coming, and there have been a lot of reports on disposable waste flooding streets and oceans. Like the mask is a good example, but in dining facilities. Guys, I'm really sorry, but yeah, in dining halls also, since again to-go culture is becoming the norm, we've had to work with dining services very early on. And actually some of the students on the call have been really critical in working with dining to plan for this program. So Eco2Go is a big one. The utensil is another big one, but unfortunately we also know that there will be more disposable waste due to that to-go culture. Alexis, did you want to talk more about that?
About the Eco2Go program?
No, just the efforts of working with dining to reduce waste in the time of the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Well, most of the work that I've done with them has been through the Eco2Go program, but also composting has been, in the last like year, 2 years, has been more widely spread around campus. So at the start of the last academic year, composting was introduced into the Danforth University Center, which was born out of a student desire for having compost there that previously there was not compost available, which was a concern to many students. And then compost has also been spread into the residential colleges on the South 40, so the underclassmen. through the WUGA program, which was great because that responded to student desire to be able to compost within their dorms and not just within the dining halls. So I would say those are two of the biggest things that come to mind, along with the Eco2Go program that has existed for a few years on this campus, but is now getting a wider relaunch. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm excited about, is just seeing that program sort of be built back up again and hopefully stick around for a long time.
Yeah. Thank you for that contribution. Also, I want to say that in the end, dining services is also benefiting from more reusable programs, because in the end, it can be more expensive also to buy all of these disposable products. WashU also pays for the disposal of waste, so it's a big incentive to say we're going to have these reusable options for people to use. And I feel like after so many years working with dining services, we have some shared visions on that topic. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Do you know why the Eco2Go boxes haven't been widely offered in past years? That's from Sydney.
Yes, such a good question. So it was actually started by students, and I'm not remembering the timeline exactly. It was all before my time, but it ended up stopping after a few years because the trend was that the eaters, mainly students, would not return them. There were no how to say that, like deposit or guarantee system that the box would be returned, and a lot of boxes ended up being thrown away or recycled in the recycling bin, or just maybe kept, or who knows. But dining service, it was too big of an investment for dining services to replenish that stock over and over, so they just stopped doing it. So we are getting another chance now. That's why it's so important that people know about the fact that they have to return these boxes, because if it's happening again that people don't return them, then it's likely to stop forever. So spread the word about it. It's all about just knowing that they must be returned, and that even if you don't return it within a week and you still have them, it's okay, just return it as soon as you can. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and this is only the second of a series of 5, so I hope to see some of you again next week and the following weeks. Brianna will continue to present as an engagement specialist, with hopefully other students who will be joining in too. So thanks again, and we'll be following up with some resources via email. Bye everyone.
Thank you.